Ratchet Clank 2016 is a very good game. I must have played it like 6 times and I still enjoy it, but it is not a hard game. So I decided to try something out. Can you beat Ratchet Clank without taking damage? Also, I recorded the footage through the built-in PS4 share feature and didn't realize it has a mildly infuriating watermark in the bottom corner, and there's no way for me to remove it, so we're just gonna have to deal with it. Starting off, I hit New Game and had to select the difficulty. I'm not a bitch, so I set it to hard mode. The first planet is Beldon, Ratchet's home planet. After a quick stroll through the desert, we arrive at the Galactic Ranger recruitment course. It's just simple platforming and basic gun tutorials, so nothing worth noting here. On the way, I got my first hull card pack. They are optional, but they grant small bonuses to bolts and Iridium, so they don't hurt. And also, my completionist instinct drove me to collect as many as I could. After that, there's just a small arena part, but again, nothing too difficult. I just stood back and threw grenades until everything stopped existing. Next is a Clank level on planet Horde 2. Again, nothing terribly difficult so far, just mild puzzles. Then, there's the first Victon von Ion chase sequence. I was afraid this might have been some of the most troubling sections of the game, due to how Clank can feel clunky and slow, and due to how the camera angle doesn't let you prepare for some of the incoming attacks. It turns out that water is the best weapon against deadly warrior robots, and just like that, Horde 2 is complete. Back to Beldon, our favorite animal-robot duo was finally united and on a quest to save the galaxy. Together, they were unstoppable. Not even a, quote, dropship of death, unquote, was enough to slow them down. That lasted about 40 seconds. The last part combined several kinds of enemies with a dropship, so it didn't take long before I took damage. One other thing I didn't realize about this game is that it has no reload checkpoint feature, so every time I took damage I would have to get creative and find a way to end myself to get back into the game. Sometimes enemies dared to not die from my bullets, so a good whack into the head with a wrench was necessary. After a couple of attempts, I cleared the enemies and moved on to the next planet, Novalis. Now, let me tell you something about Novalis. I always go for the side quest first, and there was no trouble in clearing them. Not even the big bad amoeboids were a match for my brand new proton drum. But the main area turned out to be a problem. The place was swarming with small melee enemies. The trouble came from the mortar-like enemies throwing grenades from afar. And like I said, every time I took damage, I had to either walk up to the enemies and let them chomp on my Lombax meat. That took very long. Or I had to drown in my sorrow. After getting almost ambushed by a half-dead enemy, I made it to the bridge part, where I met more than a little bit of resistance. At least, replaying some parts leveled up my guns quite a bit, so I avoided any grinding throughout this playthrough. In the end, I kept on smacking my head against the wall, and against the enemies, until I saved the mayor of this planet, because apparently this planet's highest rank authority is a mayor, and was given the task to save his edgy nephew.
It's my nephew, Skid McMarks.
Reluctantly, I made my way to Iridium, and let me tell you, this one was fun. The land sharks, which were supposed to swarm me, were mere cannon fodder for my now world-ending weapons, and the Constructobots were few and far between. After steamrolling everything from animals to helicopters, I flew to Kirwan to bathe in sweet Galactic Ranger praise. But there was an obstacle in the way, the dreaded spaceship section. The main task is to suck up foot soldiers and throw them at the enemy flagship so hard it collapses into a black hole, hopefully. Avoiding other spaceship and shuttle's enemy fire is easy, but every single enemy is capable of shooting at you if you're close enough. Now, they do a very small amount of damage, but damage is damage, and it's not allowed. And the only way to kill myself is to bump into buildings repeatedly until the ship is reminded to explode. Sometimes you would pick up all but one enemy, which would shoot you. Sometimes you would get hit by a stray bullet, sometimes both. And every time I had to waste precious seconds of my life smearing my face across nearby buildings. This part was a pain in my ass. I died many times. I thought about temporarily decreasing the difficulty, but I persevered and eventually brought the warship down. Compared to that, the rest of the level will be downright trivial. Those brain-dead foot soldiers gave me no trouble. I used the flamethrower on the metal dogs, because like any other self-respecting Pokemon fan, I know that fire is super effective against steel. Met the video game version of me, minus the fur. I mean, he's even called a Big Al. Said hi to a big fish, and saved the day by detonating a 5 kiloton nuclear warhead in a random part of the city. I'm sure everything is fine. I was then rewarded with the title of Galactic Ranger, with attached spacesuit and sleek spaceship. As an esteemed member of society, my first mission was debatable. I had to destroy a top secret weapon in a super secret enemy base. But duty could wait, because I took a detour to planet Railgar to indulge in pleasurable activities such as racing, fighting legions of germs and germophobes, and running for my life to escape drowning in a flooding sewer. I wasn't always successful. It was fun, but I could not ignore my destiny for much longer, so I headed to Nebula G34. I was afraid of the next Clank section, but miraculously escaped mostly unscathed. I then blew up a warship, for no good reason, and finally focused on the objective. See, turns out that the top secret weapon was actually a Blargen Snagglebeast. I honestly died more than I was expecting, and more than I would admit. Still less than that bullshit spaceship section. I don't know why it was so violent, if because I trespassed into its lair, or because it was engineered to be a weapon of mass destruction, but no matter, because it would soon fall to my blade, or gun. On the way there, I learned of a new enemy jetpack prototype, which pleased my narcissistic boss, and I knew where to go, Planet Gaspard. This is surprisingly where the jetpack is introduced, so the game opens up a bit. While I did have some trouble getting to the grind boots, I am not gonna bore you with every time I took damage, especially because that was also the hardest part of the planet. I then collected a whopping 90 Telepathopus brains for no good reason, since only 30 were mandatory. I don't know, maybe I took pleasure in killing what would be now considered endangered species. But duty was calling me once again, as the enemy wanted to invade planet Battaglia to disable the Star Watch defense cannon. Nothing of notice happened there, the usual killing and dodging, although I was made fun of for the way I slide.
I'm guessing ice is not a Lombax's natural habitat.
I also randomly stumbled upon a message for me when I was enjoying a nice deadly roller coaster, and it turned out to be another request for help, from someone who looked suspiciously like my ex-boss. Must have been a prank call. Not even the defense of the cannon itself gave me trouble, probably due to the high levels of caffeine coursing through my veins, which made me hyper-aware of enemy fire. Now I had a choice. I could either follow my team to the mission, or I could check out the prank call coming from a luxurious beach planet. I don't need to tell you which one I chose. Apparently, it was not a prank call. There were ships trying to suck up all the water from this planet for some dumb reason. I could not let this crime go unpunished. I stomped everything, animal and somewhat humanoid, who dared stand in my way. I once again witnessed the miracle of seeing myself through a video game, and was off to Quartu. Some minor cleanup was due in order to leave the planet, which mainly involved blasting the water collectors, but it wasn't long before I found myself taking the fight to the enemy in Quartu. You know the drill. More fighting, one more Clank sequence, and even more fighting. This time, the boss I had to face was a family of friendly robots, the Zircons, commandeered by the formidable Mrs. Zircon. She fought well, but she died, like the rest of those who tried to defy me. This time, the enemy plan was pure evil. They want to blow up a planet. Therefore, there is only one thing I can possibly do. Backtrack to earlier planets to casually collect things I left behind now that I have shiny new gadgets. After I ran out of things to do, I showed up at the party. it was already full-on war. What I didn't know at the time was that this was not going to be a party for much longer. You might remember the brain damage I received from the Kirwan space section. This is like that, except that instead of angry robot toddlers, here I had to dodge homing missiles and grids of lasers, on top of the swarming enemy ships. The goal is the same as last time, blow up the warship, except that now I have shiny rockets that can hurt the damn thing. You have no idea how much time I spent on this. I lost count of how many times I died. I was simply not able to not take damage, due to the sheer amount of enemies. Also, I realized that I likely have a faulty controller, which only made things worse. I'm gonna cut it short. I had to lower the difficulty. In my rage, I set it to easy mode and swapped controller and ended up kicking the warship's mechanical ass. The nightmare was over. I even had to dodge a last-second potential head-on collision. Thankfully, that ended up being the hardest obstacle to overcome in the entire run. I was so relieved that they blazed through the rest of the game, starting with the Lost Clank puzzles and Victor von Iron section, and on with the Deplanetizer. After learning of the turn to evil of Captain Quark, I knew the end was near. One last detour brought me to Calibo 3, where I had to win another race to get a hologuise to sneak back into the Deplanetizer to end this once and for all. It turns out that even super advanced robots can't tell the difference between a person and a hologram, so that works, I guess. I started clearing room after room, until I was able to trigger my trap card. I collected the last Rhino holocard, and you know what that means. The last bosses are gonna be a blast. I hopped back to Realgar to get the latest prototype of pure destruction and annihilation that was on the market, the Rhino. Now, we're in the endgame. First is Captain Quark, which tried to use cheap tricks on me, like using the Groovytron. He soon realized the mistake in his ways when he tasted napalm. And now, for the final boss, Dr. Nefarious. I'm not gonna lie, this was quite anticlimactic. My Rhino had quickly gotten to max level, and the mad scientist had no chance of damaging me, let alone winning. I cast him into a dwarf star and made history as the galaxy's greatest hero. To be fair, Novalis did meet the same fate as Alderaan, but at least my armor didn't get dirt on it. And just like that, I beat Ratchet Clank without taking damage. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you would like me to do next. I am still trying things out, so feel free. But as always, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.